Hey guys, and welcome. In this video, we're gonna run through an exact step-by-step on how to set up your Klaviyo account, a full Klaviyo tutorial going through pretty much everything you need to know, whether you're a beginner or whether you're an expert, and also some major pitfalls and major things to avoid if you're just getting started off, or again, if you're a little bit more experienced. You'd be really surprised to see some of the mistakes that even experienced email marketers make. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna wanna do when you're creating your Klaviyo account is connect it to Shopify. Now it's gonna walk through a couple of steps here with you, but the main thing that you're gonna wanna look at is making sure the integration is set up properly and you don't have any of the key things missing. So how you can go about checking that is go in here, go to your settings tab, go to integrations, and then what you need to do is go to the Shopify tab. So in the Shopify tab, you're gonna see a couple of different things here. You're gonna see the store URL at the very top. This is blurred out right now. You're gonna see the additional tracking features. So this is usually checked off. You wanna make sure this is checked on so that effectively you're able to see when people are viewing certain products. And it's just gonna basically help you with a little bit more visibility, and it's gonna help you with flows like the browse abandonment flow as well. Now, if you're looking to set up the add to cart tracking, that's a little bit more advanced. They have a training on how to do this here. It's not very robust. And if you are looking to do that, go ahead, check it out on our channel. We have a full video on that as well. Now, the next piece here is your sync settings. Now, this is really, really, really important. And this is the piece that we see almost every brand get wrong. So when you're setting this up, you want to make sure you're syncing your Shopify email subscribers to Klaviyo. This is great. But the main thing that you're going to want to look at here is either you're creating a specific list with just Shopify customers and you're excluding them from the welcome series, or you're adding them in, but you're making sure you're also excluding them from the welcome series. The mistake that we see a lot of brands make is going in here and selecting a list and saying, you know what, we want to use the newsletter list, which is the main list that they use for their welcome series. So what happens then is when people are initiating checkout, or when someone just purchased even, they're getting the welcome series as opposed to an abandoned checkout, or as opposed to the thank you series. This is super, super important to get right out the gate. And if you do this, you're doing this better than a lot of the brands that we see. So this leads us nicely into the next piece, which is lists and segmenting. Now this is really, really important as well. And you find this section on the left-hand side under list and segments. So a really important thing here to keep an eye on is making sure you're not using double opt-in. And how you do that is you go in here, you can select all the lists. You shouldn't have many in here yet. And basically what you want to do is go into your main list. So this is the newsletter list, for example, with this client. What you're going to want to do is go to settings, and then consent. So you can see here, there's a double opt-in feature and a single opt-in feature. Now, what double opt-in means is basically you're gonna require people to not only opt in on a pop-up or something like that, but also they're gonna receive an email and they need to confirm that email in addition to actually opting in. So what that's gonna lead to is about a 50% drop in your list growth, which is pretty massive and something you definitely wanna be cognizant of. Now that said, if you are experiencing a lot of issues with a lot of spam or fake emails being submitted, you may want to look at double opt-in. Some ESPs actually require double opt-in, most don't, but we found that there are some companies and some ESPs in Europe, for example, who do require double opt-in. What you're gonna experience if you don't have that is your emails are gonna bounce from those specific servers. But that said, that's not super common, so don't worry about that and start with single opt-in first. So once these lists are set up properly, you can get to the fun part, which is setting up your flows and setting up your campaigns. But just before we do that, you want to make sure you have a sign-up form to make sure you're actually building a list. Now, building out an opt-in form on Klaviyo is actually pretty easy, but oftentimes we'll start with an incentive like a discount or a giveaway to encourage subscriptions. Now, if you're able to do discounts, that's great. We found often like a 10% off or a certain dollar off works really well. And one key thing to note here is if you have a higher average order value, usually using the dollar amount actually works better than a percentage. For example, if you're selling $3,000 pieces of furniture, if you use $300 off versus 10% off, it'll look better to the consumer to get $300 off versus 10% off. The inverse is true if you have a lower average order value. So if you have an average order value of like $30 and you say you get $3 off, people are gonna be like, cool, thanks, bro. But if you have 10% off, it looks more, even though it's the exact same. Now, if you don't have a ton of margin to work with, then having a free product with purchase or something along those lines can be very beneficial. The offer here, though, is super key. You want to make sure that you're not just saying join our list to join our list, and you should be shooting for a 4 to 8% conversion rate. If you're a heck of a lot lower than that, you want to make sure that you're testing different offers to start. If you have a bad offer, you're not going to hit that 4 to 8%. End of story. So let's jump in, and I want to show you exactly how to create a pop-up or a sign-up form. So basically, all you need to do is go in here, click create sign-up form. You can choose one of these standard templates if you want, or you can just click create new sign-up form. I'm going to go ahead and just click this one just so you can see this is a multi-step sign-up form. So it's going to be for email and SMS, and then you choose your list. So I'm going to choose my list, which is newsletter list. And then SMS subscribers is going to be added to the SMS subscribers list. I'm going to click create form. And then the main things that you can do here is just, you can change the setting, you can change the style. So you can say like, you want a pop-up, a full page, a flyout, an embed. Typically, we're going to recommend using a pop-up here. It works the best for our clients, and based on everything we've tested, this works the best. And then you can choose the actual layout here and the size. So typically, we don't mess around with the size too much unless we're dramatically changing the design. But you could say you want any side image, you want a left side image, or you want a right side image. It'll change that around for you, and then you can go ahead and click on this and actually replace the image very easily there. So the other piece is this section up here. So the header, and then the kind of subtext and the email field, as well as the call to action button. Now, a couple of keynotes here. This header is going to be where you want to have your main offer for getting people into the list, essentially, right? So if you have a 10% off offer like this is exactly where you want to have that. You don't want that to be buried. You want that to pop, and you want to make sure people see that right when they open the pop-up form. The other thing you want to note is you don't necessarily need this, to be honest. You can have a disclosure or something along those lines if you want, but what we found is the simpler the better. And if you try to overcomplicate a sign-up form, it ends up actually reducing the opt-in rate. Our goal here is to get as many people as possible and to get as much information as possible from those people as well. And I'll touch on that in just a moment, actually. So if you do want to collect additional information, you can do that in two different ways. You can either build out the sign-up form and add more steps in. So you could say add more blocks, and I'm going to add another text input field, right? You would select a certain profile property, and you could say like name or something like that, and you would create name, or you could select your first name, for example, right? So you could say like first name, you could have like full name if you want, and you could select that, or you could have like first name, last name. You could do something along those lines, or you could ask for people's preferences as well. So this is actually a really cool option where you're able to add in a radio button, and you could say, so you would have to select or create the profile property first, but then you could say, could be like, what are you most interested in? And then you could be like men's clothing, women's clothing, and then you could say both. This is one we use a lot with apparel companies who sell both men's and women's clothing. It helps us identify and better segment out the list so that we're getting to the right people at the right time with the right message. And we don't send a man things that are for women and women things that are for men. And we give an option for both too, just in case you do want to receive both products. But at the end of the day, segmenting this out and learning a little bit more about your customers right here is super key. Now, one thing to note here is that the more questions you ask, typically the lower the opt-in rate is going to be. So what we usually shoot for is no more than 2 questions on this page. And we're going to say like, you know what, we're going to do email, and we're going to do asking people what product preferences they have. Cool, that's great. We don't want to add 6 or 7 questions because that's going to feel like they're applying for a passport instead of trying to join our email list. Now, the other way to collect additional information from people in a pop-up is to use a multi-step sign-up form. You're actually going to have multiple steps in here. You can see at the top here, you have your email opt-in and then your SMS opt-in. This can be helpful if you do want to have an email and an SMS opt-in as well, or if you want to collect your email only and then you want to ask a couple more questions like birthday or things like that. That again will help to better segment, create some interesting like maybe birthday campaigns and that type of thing. Now, when you are building this out, one really important thing to do is make sure your call to action has selected the right list. This is going to be very, very important because this is going to feed your first flow, and we'll get into that first flow in just half a second here. Basically, you want to make make sure that this is feeding the newsletter list or whatever list is triggering the welcome series. The reason for this is because when people submit this, they're expecting to receive your welcome offer. So that's why you want to make sure they're added to your welcome series. So let's dive in and show you how to build that out. So in order to create the welcome series, you're going to want to go to the flows section on the left-hand side here. So go ahead, click flows, and then go to create flow on the top right. Now, this is really cool because Klaviyo actually has a bunch of these built out flows. So since we're looking for the welcome series, we're going to go ahead and search for the welcome series, and we're just going to use the standard welcome series here. Now, you can either choose to use this initial kind of template that they have, or you can actually create it from scratch at the top right here. We always just use this template that they have because it makes it a little bit easier. It just pre-populates a bunch of things that we would otherwise be populating. And again, it's just easier to do. So what you want to do here, click on that, click on standard, and then what you're going to want to do is just name your welcome series. So you can just keep it as is. We always like to add a little bit of a naming convention. Like usually we say like EM at the end just to signify that it's us that's doing it. And then you have the trigger. So the trigger is going to be that newsletter. So when someone is added to the newsletter, that's going to be the trigger. And this is why it's really important that you're not adding the people from your Shopify checkout to the newsletter list, because if you are, those people are going to get the welcome series because this is the trigger for the welcome series. So once you've got that lined up, go ahead and click create flow. Give it a second to load here. And then what you're going to want to do is set up the flow filters. So with this trigger set up, we have when someone subscribes to the newsletter. We also want to add some flow filters so that we're able to restrict who's actually getting into this flow. For example, we don't want people who just purchased to be added to this flow. So what we're going to do, and I'll show you exactly what our welcome series looks like. So this is what our welcome series looks out like when it's fully built out. And you can see it's probably different than other welcome series that you might have seen because a lot of people stop at the third email. We continue to build it out. So we build out 7, 8, 10 emails sometimes just for the welcome series. Now, a key thing to note here is you don't want them all to be the exact same. So as you can see, we have our trigger of like when someone subscribes to the newsletter. We have our flow filters, and these are the flow filters we're going to want to add in. So they've added to cart 0 times since starting this flow, checkout started 0 times since starting this flow, and placed order 0 times since starting this flow. You have an option as well to add a profile tag in here, and effectively what that can do is just say exclude from campaigns, and then you can use that profile tag to create a segment, which then you can exclude those people from campaigns if you want to do that. Not necessary though. So going back here to the welcome series, you want to click add flow filter, add a condition, what someone has or has not done. And then you're going to want to say the first one was added to cart. So added to cart 0 times since starting this flow. And the key differentiator here is and or, because if you use the or function, it could mean they haven't added to cart, or they haven't done this, or they haven't done that, which is very, very broad. Basically, you're saying anyone who hasn't done any of these things, you're letting into the flow. But if you're using the and filter, you're making sure that someone hasn't added to cart, and they haven't initiated checkout, and they haven't purchased. So let's go ahead and make those other two filters here. So what someone has done, choose metric. We'll do the placed order 0 times since starting this flow. And the last one, someone has done, checkout started 0 times since starting this flow. And then you go ahead and click save. Now, in order to actually build these emails out, you're going to need some sort of design tool. And what I would recommend is either Canva, Figma, or Photoshop. We use Figma just because we've got graphic designers in-house and they're really good at what they do and they're very experienced with graphic design. However, if you're just getting started off, Canva can be a really good choice. And honestly, sometimes I'll use that for ads or little presentations or things like that, where you just need something super quick. So if you're a beginner, I'd recommend just using Canva. Now, some key things to note here about design that a lot of people get hung up on is, number one, the design should be 600 pixels wide. You shouldn't be having a 1200 or 1800 or 2400 pixel wide email. That's going to cause some issues for you down the line. Be careful about contrast is the second thing. You want to make sure the colors you're using are easily legible and you don't have something like a bright green on a white background. Something like this works really well, black and white. If you don't have those brand colors yet, something like this works really well. So just having black text on a white background. Number 3 is use system fonts and web fonts, i.e. fonts that are going to look the same across multiple different platforms. Number 4 is designing for mobile first. Most users are opening their emails on mobile first. And how you do that is when you're building it out on Canva, you can design for mobile first, but you can also look at this and see like, how does this actually look on mobile? mobile versus desktop. A mistake that we often see brands make is they design it and look super beautiful on desktop, and then when you look at it on mobile, you're like, I can't even read this. So optimize for mobile first, but make sure the design looks good on both. Number 5 is making sure you actually have a CTA above the fold or close to the top. I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you look at these emails, you'll see there's a call to action in each one of them above the fold. And what the fold is basically when someone's holding their phone and looking at their email, is that call to action above the first place where they have to swipe. So if they open their email and they see a call to action, that means it's above the fold. If they have to scroll down 2 or 3 times or swipe down 2 or 3 times, that is not above the fold, and it's going to impact your conversion rates. So make sure you've got a call to action above the fold. The next piece you want to make sure you're considering is making sure you're not making people burn too many calories. If you have an email and you just keep building it on and you've got image after image after text, and it's just this ongoing email, people are going to, one, not know what to do, because if you're asking people to do 4 different things in an email, people aren't going to know what to do if you're asking them to sign up to your newsletter, subscribe and save, buy this product, check out your blog, and, call us with any questions you have, right? Too many call to actions leads to confusion and leads to decision fatigue, so people don't end up purchasing as much. So now that you know kind of like some rough email guidelines, the main things that we're going to want to do in the welcome series, coming back to this, is in the first 3 emails, number 1, we're going to just welcome them to the brand and deliver them the opt-in offer. This is very important. If you offer them 10% off, this is where you give them that 10% off. You're also wanting to welcome them to the brand. The second piece is a brand mission or founder story. Oftentimes we'll also mix in a little reminder about using that discount that they got in email 1. You want to have a 1-day delay here and make sure you're not just sending these back to back to back. The third email after another 1-day delay is a social proof and testimonials email. Now, this is where you want to showcase some of the social proof, some of your client testimonials or customer testimonials or great reviews that you've got. You might also want to sprinkle in some of your best sellers. And again, here, you want to remind people about that offer that you gave in the first email. So actually building these emails out is not super difficult. Once you've got those designs, whether it's Canva or Figma or Photoshop, you just need to build this out in here. You can either upload those images you've designed or create text boxes and add the text that you just created. You can resize this text font. You can align it in different ways. You can add personalization in as well. If you want to say like, hey, first name, and you want to replace first name with friend. If you don't have the first name of that person, you go first name, be like, hey, first name, default friend, welcome, right? And you would build that out how you see fit, kind of following this as a template. Now, another flow that is going to be one of the most important flows for you is the abandoned checkout flow. Now, this flow is crucial for basically recovering potentially lost sales. There is a difference though between abandoned cart and abandoned checkout, and I'll show you what that is. So effectively, we're going to go through that same process, go to flows, go to create flow, and then we're going to go ahead and search for cart. So what you're going to find is you're going to have a couple of different options here. You're going to have like an abandoned cart with a high-low value, a standard abandoned cart reminder, abandoned cart trigger for Shopify. There's a variety of different options that you're going to have here. Now, if I go ahead and click on this standard one, what you're going to see is this is actually for when someone started checkout, not for when someone abandoned their cart. This is actually the one you want to set up first. So differentiation here with Klaviyo, and I don't know why they do this, but they call your abandoned checkout abandoned cart and the abandoned cart as well. Kind of annoying. I don't know why they do it. They need to fix this. If anyone from Klaviyo is listening, please fix this. So effectively what you want to do here is, again, go ahead and select your name. The trigger is already selected here, which is started checkout, and then you're going to go and create flow. Now, the nice part about this one is it's already going to add in these flow filters for you. And then what you're going to want to do is look at building these out. So typically with our abandoned checkout flow, this is what it's going to look like. So again, we're going to have a flow filter of placed order 0 times, has not been in the flow for the last 30 days. The trigger is when someone started checkout. And then the time delay is something you're going to want to test out for your brand. So typically with the time delay, we're actually going to want to test that out and see if an hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours works better. So one of the things we're going to want to test out out with the abandoned checkout flow here is split testing send times and split testing the time delay here too. So you'll see with ours, it is 1 hour delay here. We always test that out with clients. And then the first thing we have in this flow is just a reviews and reminder email. And this is where it's just like, hey, did you forget about your product? And then maybe sprinkle in some reviews there. We'll wait a day and then we'll highlight some of the main unique selling propositions or USPs. And we'll also handle some of the main objections that people usually give when buying the product. We'll also sprinkle in some more reviews here. The third email after another day delay is some UGC reviews. This is when we're going to mix in some content that's generated by the users to show a little bit more credibility and a little bit more trust. So those are two of the most important flows you're going to want to set up. Now, in terms of campaigns, let's dive in and I'll show you how to create some campaigns. Now, just before we dive into the campaigns, the thing you want to focus on here is consistency and quality. You want to make sure you're not pissing people off and people know what to expect as well. So what you want to do is build out a campaign calendar. Now, typically we'll do this in something like ClickUp because that's our task management software, but you can actually view this as well right on the campaign calendar in Klaviyo. You can go ahead and look at, today, you can look at the week, the month, and you can look at all of the campaigns that are currently scheduled. Now, one of the things that people often neglect with campaigns is segmentation. Segmentation is really just sending to the right people at the right time with the right message. Now, a lot of people overthink this, but what we do with our segmentation is first start with considering the intent. Did they just go to the website? Did they open or click an email, or have they opened or clicked multiple emails, or did they purchase? And within these, we then look at RFV. RFV is recency, frequency, and value. And what I mean by that is recency would be how recently did they do this? Did they open an email 347 days ago, or did they open an email 3 days ago? Someone who opened an email 3 days ago has higher intent than someone who opened it 347 days ago. Frequency would be if they've opened 7 of the 7 last emails, they have a high frequency. They've done this 7 times. But if they've only opened 1 of the last 7 emails, different story. And the final piece is value. Now, this is really mostly important just for purchasers, but if you look at a purchaser who has spent $50 versus $500 or $5,000, big differences. So the best segments that we start with, I'll show you right here. The 30-day engaged all is a great one. And the 30-day engaged all is basically everyone who is engaged in the last 30 days. And you can see the definition here is anyone who's been active on site in the last 30 days, anyone who has clicked an email at least once in the last 30 days, opened an email in the last 30 days, and can receive email marketing. So this is a 30-day engaged all. Now, we typically also filter for purchasers or for just leads who have not purchased yet. And we'd call that a 30-day engaged purchaser or a 30-day engaged lead. So this is a really good starting point, and we'll usually start off with that 30-day engaged segment, and then we'll move into a 60-day or a 90-day engaged segment as we see the open rates looking good, the click rates looking good, and the purchase rates looking good. So if you look at this, this is a 60-day engaged lead, and what the filter looks like is they've placed an order 0 times overall time. They've been active on site, clicked an email, or opened an email at least once in the last 60 days, and they can receive email marketing. So now that you've built out your segments, now you can start building out campaigns. Now, building out a campaign is very similar to a flow, except you don't have a trigger point. You have a certain date that you're sending that campaign. So if you go to the campaign section and you go create campaign, it's going to prompt you to create a campaign name, the date you want to send it out on, and then if it's an email or an SMS. Now, we're going to go ahead and you can actually select the tags here as well. This is kind of helpful if you want some increased segmentation. We're just going to click save and continue. So like I said, you can select a tag here if you want. The next thing that we're going to look at is the recipients that we're going to send to. So this is where segmentation is important. Not everyone on your list is going to care about everything you have to say. So what you want to make sure is you're sending the right message to the right people at the right time. So this is where this list choice or this segment choice is super important. So for example, if we're sending a product spotlight email out, we don't want to send that to the entire list. The main reason for that is because not everyone's going to actually be interested in that. And the other thing is we want to make sure we're not sending that to people who just bought that product because they already either know they love it or they know they don't. So basically, let's say we're going to send this to a 30-day engaged all audience. And then what you want to do is select your don't send to or your exclusions list. Now, typically what we do is we're going to exclude the bounces. We're going to exclude exclude the people who have soft bounced. We're going to exclude the suppressed. We're going to exclude the sunset unengaged. If we're looking at this further, if we're doing, for example, a promotion on, I'm going to call it the iron patch, for example, we're going to exclude iron buyers in the last 25 days. Again, for the reasons I mentioned before. We're going to click this off because we don't use smart sending here for campaigns. And then we're going to go ahead and click tracking on. This is going to give you a rough estimate of how many people are going to be included there. And then you're going to want to click continue to content. This is where you actually build it out. So the subject line is really, really important. This is absolutely key. You want to make sure that you are really sparking curiosity with your subject line and building upon that curiosity and building upon that intrigue with the preview text. So you want to build that out here. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. You can check out another one of our videos if you want more details on how to build out great subject lines. But the next thing you want to do is create your email. So you can either use one of these kind of templates in the library, which a lot of them honestly are quite good, or you can create a blank template. Now, usually what we'll do is we'll actually create saved templates for each client so that we're able to go in and we don't have to recreate the wheel every single time, like build out a new footer every single time and build out a new header every single time and build out a dynamic text block every single time. We usually save those as universal elements so we can use them in future campaigns. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to jump in and say, you know what? I really like the looks of this campaign. It looks super clear. It looks concise. It looks simple. And I like the look of this campaign. So I'm going to click use template. And then what it's going to allow you to do is basically just edit the things in here, right? So obviously you're going to want to replace this with your own image. You're going to want to probably change this text. You're going to want to change this CTA and make sure the CTA is going to the URL that you want it to go to. These are kind of the main things that you're going to want to include. And honestly, this looks like a decent email. It's super concise. I might change some of these things up a little bit and obviously make sure that this is actually kind of speaking to the right person at the right time. But this is, you know, a decent looking email here. So you can use a lot of these templates just to kind of get things rolling, see what works, see what doesn't. Like a really important thing you want to focus on is having at least some text in your emails. If you have no text, you're going to get flagged by ESPs because you will look like spam. So for example, with this, they have some text here, they have an image here, they have another image here, they have another piece of text here. And this again is different than having just an image with the, you know, text already in there, right? If you just uploaded an image versus like you have text overlay. So the other really important things, and this is for flows and for campaigns, you need to make sure that you have these key pieces within every single email. And I'm going to like hammer this in. Every single email needs to have an unsubscribe button and it needs to have your address. You need to make sure that this is in there for legal reasons, but also a lot of the ESPs are really cracking down on this. If you look at some of the updates in February 2024, Google and Yahoo are cracking down on a lot of email deliverability things. So you really got to be on this. So once you've created a campaign that you like, you can do a couple of things. You can preview this. So you preview this as yourself and go ahead and look at this and you're like, yeah, you know what, looks great. Or you can send a test to yourself. So you can go ahead and click like, you know, enter your email there. You can save that and then you can send that and you can open it in your desired email provider. So you can open it up in Gmail and Yahoo and another email provider if you want, just to see what it looks like in different platforms or different ESPs. So once you're done with that and you're like, yep, looks fantastic, let's get going, you would then click save. You can either create an A/B test. There's another video on A/B testing because you can go pretty deep on this, but I'm just going to say continue to review. And I actually have to add a subject line. Check this out. Woohoo. Going to continue to review now. And then it's going to confirm like, okay, your recipients, your smart sending is disabled for this one. You have a subject line, confirm replies, content, unsubscribe link, and tracking. And then you're going to want to click on schedule or send. Now, this is where you can either send it right away or schedule it. Now, we are always going to schedule it because we're planning 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead of time, sometimes a little bit longer than that. And then you can select what type of email or what kind of sending you want to use here. So you can either use a fixed send time, a smart send time, or gradual send time. A fixed send time is just saying like you're sending at a specific time. Smart send time is actually pretty cool. It allows you to kind of optimize and it allows Klaviyo to automatically send at the ideal time. And you can either choose a focused time, an optimal time, or an exploratory time, or you can choose a gradual send time. So you would say like the start time is going to be 12 PST, and then you're going to send to 20% of recipients per hour. This is past, so I obviously can't do that, but I would say like the 21st. And then you click schedule. I'm not going to do that because this is not the brand and I don't want to send this campaign to 70,000 people. Okay, so that is a complete end-to-end tutorial on how to use Klaviyo, how to set it up, how to use flows, segmentation, campaigns. There is so much more to go through, and this could be a 4-day long video. If you do have other questions, you want to dive deeper into flows, or if you want to dive deeper into segmentation or deeper into campaigns, go ahead, click the subscribe and like button. You can also check out our channel. There's a ton of videos on there. I post at least once a week, usually 2 times a week, just new content, new kind of tips, tricks, and things that are working for our agency and our clients. And if, again, you did like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. And by all means, if you do have an e-com brand that's doing over $50,000 a month in revenue, you can go ahead and click the link below in the description and apply to work with us now. Thank you so much for sticking with me for this long, and we will chat soon.